Aloha everybody and happy Halloween. I'm Jivananda.
And I'm Kristie.
And we are here with the AvaitriA Akashic Academy. And today we want to talk to you about some spooky things.
Because it's Halloween, we're going to talk about ghosts, spirits, and other worldly beings.
How to identify when they're in your world and what to do about them. So to kick things off, I want to ask Kristie what your first experience to this sort of spirit/ghost world was.
I can tell you exactly what my first experience was like, because I remember it as if it was yesterday, because it was so intense and so surprising for me. It was many years ago, and we were on a trip to Italy with a group of people. And my friend Melanie and I had the crazy idea of going rollerblading at 11 o'clock at night. We were right awake. We're like, let's just have some little bit of activity over here. And there was this house that we had seen during the daytime as we were walking into town. And it was an abandoned house.
Oh.
And somehow it intrigued us. So Mel said to us, like, hey, why don't we go in and check it out? And 11 o'clock at night, it was super dark, it was super quiet. And so we rollerbladed into the place, and we felt this really intense presence. And, as I said, it was my first experience ever with the spirit world, and I had no idea what to do with it, and how to react to it, and really what it was. And it really scared the living daylights out of me, and it scared the living daylights out of Mel. And we looked at each other, and we were like, ghosts! And we ran out of the house, and actually we rollerbladed out of the house and down the street, and we were both shaking. Because, it wasn't that we felt endangered or anything like that, but it felt just like so strange and weird to us and intimidating. And also unknown. It was more the feeling of what is this thing that we felt? What was this presence that we felt that actually scared us more so than maybe the presence itself, like not knowing what it was.
Yeah. The mysterious presence of the unknown ghost.
Exactly. What was your first one like?
So, I never had any exposure to ghosts when I was growing up in Minnesota. So I never knew if I ever really believed in them. It was never something that I ever thought about. So I was like, if you don't experience something, for more or less, it's more ultimately not true, right? Until I moved to Hawaii. And Hawaii is full of spirits. It's full of all sorts of lost, trapped souls that are looking for another way out. And basically, my first direct experience was I was invited over to a friend's house, and my friend and I were basically getting ready to go to sleep. I was kind of in that in-between sleep state, and I started hearing a lot of activity, kind of boards creaking, little things clicking, just like a presence of somebody's, moving around. But I didn't think much about it because it was a home that I wasn't familiar with. It was the first time I was spending the night there, so I just went to bed. But when I woke up in the morning, I went into the bathroom, and this is where it got exciting.
Oh, yes, it did.
The mirror lifted up and slammed down in front of me when I was looking in the mirror. And the door behind me opened and slammed shut multiple times. And I thought, okay, that is definitely not normal. And it was very clear in that instant that spirits and ghosts are real, and there was one definitely trying to get my attention. And so from that moment my energy shifted, and I realized, okay, this is a real thing, and now it's something that I have to deal with. What am I going to do about this spirit? What does the spirit want, and what's ultimately going on here? So that was kind of my introduction into the spirit world. And from that point on, my journey with spirits became very in-depth. And I'm sure that yours has as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I wanted to kind of stick with you here for a moment, that's
Sure.
okay. Because, for me, the first time I encountered spirit, it was a really surprising and really scary moment. But it changed as my intuitive abilities changed, and I would love to talk to you what your relationship with spirits is nowadays compared to how it was during your first encounter, and what helped you open yourself up to the world of spirits and become more, have more awareness about them.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it started with my real initiation into the spirit world, surprisingly, started with spirit possession. I didn't know this at the time, and what I found out is that innocence has an ability of a certain level of protection for us as we kind of are navigating unknowingly, ignorantly into the world, of unknown things. And I made the mistake of not knowing, picking up 2 feathers that were intentionally laid down as offerings to children who had actually passed, and this took place in Hawaii. And by picking up these feathers, I had no idea that they were an offering to the dead, but lo and behold, I did it anyway. And from that instant, I felt different. I felt a presence in my being, and I didn't feel like myself. And there was kind of emotions and energies that were kind of overtaking me and influencing me, and I had trouble kind of identifying my own feelings from these other feelings, and it was a very kind of confusing time. And so this initial experience basically, literally, took me right into the world of spirits, and it was a catalyst for kind of awakening a whole nother level of connection with myself, with my own soul, with the divine, and how to work with spirits, how to work with energy.
And it's actually really interesting because I heard this story from someone I do know whose husband transitioned and actually went into her body and kind of possessed her. And she was a non-smoker, her husband was a very, very heavy smoker. And from one day to the next, she had this craving for cigarettes. And she needed to smoke a certain amount every single day until she was, she met a shaman healer who actually told her that she was possessed by her husband, that did a ritual to allow the husband to leave her body and go on in his journey and, ascend to the light. And from that moment on, literally overnight, she couldn't even touch a cigarette anymore. Like, she stopped smoking and she didn't even like the taste anymore. It was just because the spirit was in her body and had taken over. She was actually developing the same cravings the spirit has, because the spirit cannot smoke. So often, that's the first time I've heard about it. But from my experiences after that, a spirit who has specific cravings can then transfer these cravings onto the person the spirit actually possesses. So, it's also something important for you, Avatrians, when you go to a place and you feel a funky energy, and all of a sudden, you have cravings for something or emotions you haven't had before, to have that awareness that it might be either a spirit possession, which is when the spirit literally takes over your body, or a spirit attachment, which is, the spirit just attaches to one part of your body, but transfers their energy or their thoughts or emotions into your field. And it's important, if you're highly sensitive, which a lot of you might be, to just pay attention to extreme changes in your behavior and your emotion or even your cravings.
Yeah, and for many of you, it may not ever get to be that extreme. And, basically we're wanting to share this video with you to inform you, educate you, and share with you that spirits are definitely real. And, the term ghost is a very common experience that is happening all over the world, And how to work with that energy, not to necessarily be afraid of it, but to ultimately get to a place of understanding that the soul gets trapped here. And there's there's all sorts of different reasons why different souls end up getting kind of stuck in between worlds. For instance, a lot of times when a soul dies really suddenly, it doesn't realize it actually died.
Exactly, yeah.
And so it gets it's confused to the reality of what actually took place. It's not like, hey, I was laying in a hospital bed for 2 weeks, going through the process of letting go of life. It happened so suddenly that it didn't get a chance to even process what took place, and it thinks it's still here. And a lot of times that's basically considered a trapped soul. They're stuck in between worlds, and they're not they're not aware of it.
Or another reasons for a soul to be trapped in between the two planes is also a commitment, that they would promise to protect someone or promised to be there for someone, or what I've also seen, the attachment to something physical, like the attachment, let's say, to a house, the attachment to maybe a company that they build, the attachment to the wealth that they create, like literally the attachment to the physical plane of existence. And because of these obligations, they're not being able to let go of the physical world, and then they're kind of half in the physical and half in the non-physical. So it's really important, you know, when for us, when we encounter a spirit or a ghost, to actually find out why is that spirit still present? What has prevented that spirit to go to the light as the soul left the body? What is that spirit's need? Has that spirit have a commitment that is still present that needs to be completed or released in order to liberate the spirit to finally move on?
Yeah, and you know, often it can feel a little pestery, like, oh gosh, you know, is there a spirit in here? Now I have to deal with it. And well, you know, what we found is that, you know, unless you're really willing to give it the time of day to hear it out, because it really is a wounded soul, right? It's trapped and it ultimately needs help. And a lot of times that's all that it's trying to do, is get your attention that, hey, I'm here and I don't know what's going on. You know, can you please help me? And if you're able to give it the time of day and kind of psychically tune into it, you'll be able to not only help them, but also help yourself, because now the environment will be clear of it.
And we just had an encounter with a spirit in our old place. And it was actually late at night, and Jivanada was upstairs, and I was downstairs in the living room, and all of a sudden I thought he had come down the stairs, and I looked to the door, and he wasn't there. But I saw a shape, I saw a presence right in that area. And then it disappeared. And then a few days later, the presence came back, and it was this man who was actually looking through our window into our living room. So I said to Jivanada, we need to tune in and see what's going on. So we did.
He wasn't intrusive. He wasn't trying to make a problem or anything like that. His energy was actually very light, but you could tell he was just very lost. And he was there, and you could feel the presence. And what was interesting, you know, Kristie mentioning about different influences, is that I was feeling for like the entire month prior to his discovery of like, I'm waiting for something. What am I waiting for? I was getting irritated about having to wait for things. And it was interesting because it actually wasn't my energy. I was empathically picking up on his emotions. And so Kristie's going to share a little bit about what she discovered.
Yeah, so when Jivanada and I connected with him, it turned out that it was someone who died in that area back in the late 1800s. And
he was a gold prospector.
Yeah, we lived in an area where there was a lot of gold mining going on, and there's actually a lot of spirits in that area, period, from the gold mining days. And one thing to also know is time flows different on the other side. What seems like what is like 100 years for us might seem like a year for people who are spirits. So this person had been waiting there for, probably 130, 140 years, because he had made a commitment to meet someone right in that area. And he was still upholding that obligation. And that's the reason why he didn't want to go. He had really made the commitment, I am staying until that person shows up.
Yeah, he had something in his field where he was like waiting for some opportunity, some prospect of some sort where, a guy was going to return and say, hey, I have a job for you, or hey, I have a spot for you in my mine, or there was something there that he was waiting for, and we feel like he may have passed kind of unknowingly in the night, maybe by the cold, or who knows how he actually died.
And he hadn't realized how many years had gone by, because for him it felt like it was just like the day before or a couple of days.
And so he was stuck. He was stuck waiting for a prosperity and opportunity that never came. Poor guy. And so we had to dive in and basically communicate directly to him the scenario, what's really true, and what actually happened, and the present time, and what's going on now. And then also, anytime working with a soul to actually succeed, you need to call upon some divine element. an ascended master. You can call on, Yeshua or Jesus or,
the angels,
the angels or just some divine presence to, communicate that assistance that, hey, the true path for your soul is actually to transcend, to go on. Mm-hmm. And it's time for you. And you just kind of, close the doors around what their life may have been and what emotions they may be holding on to that kind of kept them stuck, or the unknowing element of the fact that you've mm-hmm. passed. And mm-hmm. it's kind of like a very compassionate psychic communication, mm-hmm. That you pair with the divine light, and you ultimately encourage the soul to go. And most souls will go, but a lot of times there is a bit of a puzzle. Mm-hmm. You sort of have to piece together.
Yeah, you kind of have to find out why the soul is still there, because sometimes a soul won't go until the why has been cleared.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I worked with a soul very recently of an older woman who passed on right in this area where we're living now, and she was being held here out of guilt. One of her, I think, grandchildren died, and she was feeling very guilty for that. It wasn't directly her fault. I saw that the child was actually bitten by a snake, and there was nothing that they could do to save the child's life. And I could see that she also had a very strong Christian upbringing, and she had the fear of God presence in her. And she felt that somehow, if she transcended or left, she would be judged for the death of this child, even though it wasn't really her fault. She had a hard time letting go of this guilt feeling that she was holding. And so that was a very specific experience where I had to go in and really spend some time with her, making sure that the soul of her child was actually all good and reincarnated in another life and living happily and so on and so forth. I kind of had to close all these doors for her, mm-hmm. so that she could have trust and she could kind of surrender to everything was actually all the way that it was supposed to be, and that peace had actually found its place, and that it's okay for you to let go now, and that the divine loves you, and there really is no fear that you need to have around letting go.
Mm-hmm. And I actually want to bring up another topic, and that's the topic of children and ghosts. Because, if you have a child or a grandchild or work with children, quite often a child might come and say, "Hey Mom, I think I saw a ghost in my room." And, a lot of times we discredit the presence of a spirit. Mm-hmm. But, and this is something important that I want to bring up, because the child's intuitive abilities are usually really wide open. They haven't been conditioned by the world to shut down these gifts. So a lot of these kids, third eyes are still open, and they can actually see the spirits. Mm-hmm. That's why often spirits, kind of as Jivananda and I already said, if they need help, they come to people who can actually see them or help them, or have the awareness.
Potentially help them.
So that's the reason why spirits often do come to little children. And then, as if we're a parent who said, you're just making this up. There's no such thing as spirits, which is often a response I've heard many, many times. Mm-hmm. We're actually discrediting that child's intuitive abilities, and eventually that child will grow up and shut down these gifts. So again, if you have a child or work with children, or if you're a grandmother and have grandchildren, and your child comes to you the next time and says, "Hey, I saw a ghost," or "There's someone, Mom, I think there's someone in my room," what I actually would like to invite you to do is encourage that child. Mm-hmm. Say,
tell me about it. Talk to me about it. And also reassure them that it's going to be okay. It's nothing to actually be afraid of.
Exactly.
And to be open to finding out more about what's happening.
And it was actually beautiful. A friend of mine has a little son, and he was about 4 or 5 years old when we were going through our own spiritual training and learning how to work with spirits. Mm-hmm. And he came out one night when I was at her house. He said, "Mom, I saw a spirit." So what we actually did is we said to him, how are you feeling about this? What did the spirit want? And if you're scared of spirits, call in your own guardian angels, because you will feel protected. And once you call in your own guardian angels, communicate to the spirit, and maybe call in the spirit's guardian angels, or call in an angel to help the spirit. That's why the spirit came to you. And then say to the spirit, it's okay for you to go with your guardian angel and leave my room. And we gave him all these little empowerment tools. And I think it was the last time he actually said to us, there's a spirit in my room. Usually the answer was, oh, there was a spirit in my room, and I helped him to go to the light. So these kids are actually really, really easily taught to communicate with the spirits and help them.
Yeah, because I mean, the reality is that, as human beings, or being here in a human body, we're really being called to be stewards of the earth, right? We're stewards of the soul. And so anytime that we can help bring harmony to a specific area, to the land, to our home, to our family, to a spirit, it's all part of that, that oneness. It's all part of that gift of really stepping into that stewardship. And it's a blessing. It becomes a blessing for your life. It becomes a blessing for others' lives. And not only, can you help bring harmony, you can also help clear other people's energies and things, and help them become comfortable with the situation, even if it's uncomfortable.
And it's also important for us, if we do have a loved one who passed on, to allow that spirit to go, to let go, to give that spirit permission to say, you're allowed to go. And the thing is, I just want to bring that up, there's a difference between an earthbound spirit and someone who has already transcended and gone into the light. Because if you want to communicate with loved ones who have passed over, allow them to go on their journey into the light and go through the healing process, and then from that place of light they're going to be able to communicate with you. And it's going to be from a completely different energetic level, because if they're actually stuck between the planes, they can drain your energy. They can do what we talked about earlier, the spirit attachments, which is not really healthy for us. But allowing them to go through their process and then connecting with them, then communicating with them, is actually allowing you to have a really beautiful relationship with your past loved ones.
Yeah, there's so many things to talk about in this world. It's huge. There's a lot of specifics, there's a lot of details, and every specific circumstance and situation is always unique and different. We want to just encourage you to be open to a healing resolve, because the first instinct, is to get away, get the spirit out, get the spirit out. And as nice as that would be to just be able to light a candle and send them away.
Just get that sage out and smudge that with some sweet grass on it. Yeah.
A lot of times there's a little bit more to it, and they're a little bit more attached, and so, and sometimes they're not willing to go that easily. It is very helpful to light a candle anytime that you are, going to work with the energy. It kind of reinstores the blessing of the light in your own presence and field, as well as helps them, remind them. And, and I recommend, just trying it, experiencing, communicating with one and seeing what happens if there is something around and it needs to go. Now, there's always a rare situation where spirits might be a little more heavily active and could potentially pose some element of physical threat. And it is important to remain calm and remain strong and not be afraid of it, even if there is signs of, some intense activity. And it's obviously okay to reach out to people who may have more experience with this and be open to finding people, because they're out there. And we're open to, if there's certain situations that you have that you'd like to share with us, feel free to contact us through email. We also are starting a video series called Ask AvaitriA, and so if there's certain circumstances that you've had in your life or situation that you have a question about, feel free to ask us, and we'd love to help you answer that question.
Yeah, so hopefully we answered a lot of your questions about spirits. We enlightened you a little bit about how to deal with spirits. Maybe it's not scary for you to now walk into an abandoned old house in the middle of the night in Italy. So hopefully that video...
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Either way, it is a beautiful world, and we are all a part of it, whether we're in a body or out of a body. It's important to remember this time, to remember your families, to light candles for those that have passed, to honor loved ones that have been with you, to hold space for the spirit world at this time of Samhain and Halloween, because it is the time where the veil is thin and the worlds do meet, and it's a time for inter-reflection, introspection into the world of spirit and how it relates to all that we are journeying and experiencing here as a soul. So
Exactly.
anyway, we want to send you a little happy blessing
And happy Halloween.
to you and your family, and look forward to connecting with you all again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Namaste.
Aloha, namaste.